white supremacists and these militias are a genuine threat. I want to compliment the FBI and the police agencies for what they did and how they stepped up. The president has to realize the words he utters matter. But the senator talked to the governor earlier before I landed, and I talked to her. She's feeling secure and good, and I think that the FBI and others deserve a great deal of credit.
I did love that little tidbit in there. He talked to Gretchen, the governor. Good save, Joe. But setting that aside, man, that was a close call, wasn't it? Whew, they almost had her. I'm glad she's in good spirits, though. Yeah, except it was all a lie. We now have details out. 2 of the accused completely acquitted of everything. How could you possibly get acquitted of planning to kidnap and murder the governor of Michigan? Well, if it was all the FBI, that's how you'd get acquitted. You see, the FBI planned, funded, organized the entire thing, and we now know that it's all been exposed at trial, which, okay, this is one trial, not the end of the world, until you think about it long and hard and realize the federal law enforcement arm is now more than willing to frame people and send them to prison if it continues the regime's narrative about the dangers of white supremacy. Just how bad is it? Something we should probably figure out. Something we should probably ask Bryan Dean Wright about. My friend Bryan Dean Wright has something out now. It came out today, and I just love this thing. It's called The President's Daily Brief. Now, we've had Bryan on the show. Obviously, you don't need me to introduce Bryan to you, but you know what I love? I love easily consumable. I'm busy. I don't have 6 hours every day to consume all the news. You don't have 6 hours. I'm driving to work for 20 minutes. Get me caught up. That's what this is. Concise, smart, gets me caught up. I listened to today's on the way to the studio right before I got here. Good, now I'm caught up on things. Bryan, before we get to the President's Daily Brief, which we will get to, I consider it to be the most dangerous situation in the country today, the fact that our own government has decided half the country is the enemy. That historically does not end very well at all.
Well, let's acknowledge and remember something very, very important right now that isn't part of this white supremacy conversation. And then let's talk about Michigan. Right now, Joe Biden, you and I, via our taxpayer dollars, are supporting in Ukraine an entity called Azov Battalion, about 10,000 people, all of which are neo-Nazis. Yes, that is true. It is happening. So Joe Biden in Ukraine is funding white supremacy, neo-Nazis. At the same time, he's telling us that, in fact, white supremacy is the nation's greatest problem. So, to put it in different context, we're going to fund al-Qaeda, but then al-Qaeda is a serious problem here in the United States. No, of course, it's absurd, doesn't make any sense. And that's because white supremacy isn't a great problem in this country. The data is very clear on that. In fact, there was a recent study by the Department of Defense, over millions and millions of different active duty service members, less than 100 cases of extremism documented. So that's bad, but it's not an existential problem like Biden is saying. So that then, knowing that's the context, I think you're absolutely right. So why are they doing it? It's a political calculus, right? This Michigan case to me is really, really shocking. I don't know if you saw this, and I was like, this has Jesse written all over it. These dudes, the Wolverine brothers, they were sitting around getting drunk as skunks, smoking tons of weed, and they were talking about guns and libertarian ideas, and then they started popping off about, well, that Gretchen girl, she needs it, doesn't she? So these guys were not actually planning anything that had genuine intent until, as you said, the FBI said, hey, here's the plan. Here's the money to do it all. Go ahead, boys, get her done. Never mind that the informant who was involved was like, yeah, these guys are just wasting our time. You know, the FBI was like, no, push it, go, make it happen. You and I, through our taxpayer dollars and the FBI, are inciting people who otherwise wouldn't engage in lawlessness to actually engage in lawlessness. That is so wrong. That is un-American. And we should damn straight be asking our government to strip those powers from the FBI because it is not what this country should do. It is not what this country should be.
Bryan, let me ask you something, and I really just genuinely am curious. I don't remember the last time somebody from the federal government be it a sitting politician, someone at the FBI, DOJ, honestly, someone in the military. I don't remember the last time somebody high up in the federal government got arrested, charged with a crime, and sent to federal prison. I consider that to be a big problem. No, I don't want to live in a country where we're rounding up our political opponents and throwing them in jail. But if nobody is ever getting arrested at the highest levels of our government, that tells me there's no accountability at all. That sounds like what the FBI did is a crime. That doesn't sound like, oh, the case should be dismissed. Someone should be arrested for that.
Yes, look, we have seen for years now people engaged in what most reasonable people would say was lawlessness, illegality, was just wrong. I mean, James Comey took classified information, gave it to the New York Times so they would publish it, and that would force a public firestorm that would then lead to a special counsel. Okay, that's exactly what happened. James Comey, the head of the FBI, could have taken all of his notes and given it to Congress and said, hey, look, I think there's a problem with Trump. You guys investigate it. It's a political matter, not a law enforcement matter. My politics, whether or not I like Trump, that's irrelevant. You guys addressed it. That's what Comey should have done. He didn't. He broke the law, not held to account. So if you can go from the head of the FBI, who is doing this ridiculous, unlawful, un-American stuff, what do you think the rank and file of the FBI is going to do? What kind of signal does that send? It says, look, if you have personal interests, personal politics, go ahead and use those. If you want to whip each other into hysteria here within the FBI headquarters and decide you want to target certain people, go ahead. There's not going to be any accountability for that. I mean, that's the message that the past 5 to 10 years has sent. And it should be ringing an alarm bell across this country saying that we've got to get a handle on these people because they're out of control.
Don't miss Jesse Kelly Breaks History, The Forgotten Genocide, the first episode of a new series available now exclusively for First TV supporters. Visit the First TV app or thefirsttv.com to subscribe and start watching today.